Hello everyone and welcome to Studio Access. I'm Larry Walters and I'll be your host tonight. What would come to mind if I were to say fanciful flights? For those of you familiar with our guest tonight, you would say unique, original artwork. She is a sculptor, metal worker, welder, painter, and business owner. She has been described as a narrative artist and designer. And fanciful flights are just one of the many creations she's known for. Please join me in welcoming Karen Rossi. Karen, thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you for having me.
So tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you get started as an artist?
Oh my goodness. As a child, I just loved to paint and draw, and we lived in an agricultural kind of lonely area with just 10 houses on our street, and my mother would always say, go outside and play and use your imagination.
Right. And of course you did.
And that's what happened.
Now your artwork is very unique. It's really original. Do you have a particular way that you describe it?
Whimsical is a word that people use to describe my work over and over again.
That's a great term. Tell us a little bit how you actually got into the business of art. In addition to doing the art yourself, painting, as you mentioned early on, how did that eventually roll into some of the metal work that you're doing today?
Well, my father and mother started an aerospace welding business in our garage when I was in 3rd grade, and it just seemed natural to become self-employed. So I saw him start from scratch. He built the business. They built the business to have over 27 employees. And impressive. He had an infectious love for metals and metalworking, and I caught it.
So you actually helped out in the shop as well?
Oh no, I was a girl, so I was not expected to be in the shop whatsoever. I was invited to work in the office like my sisters did, and that just wasn't for me. But at some point after I graduated from college, I volunteered at Creative Arts Workshop in New Haven.
Oh yeah.
And some of the moms of my students were opening a folk art shop. And they learned that I was sneaking welding lessons with a retired Parks Department worker. So I'd go over his house, and he would hold my hand in the torch and in the basement, and we would slowly weld this fantastic trout. And when I did present it to my dad, I went to the welding shop one day and drove up and said, "Dad, here's what I made." And he said, "You did not make that." And
didn't believe you.
No.
But of course you did.
Yeah, and then he was really shocked, and he gave me a corner in the shop next to the giant air compressor, which is probably where I lost my hearing. But it was free. Well, obviously I didn't lose my hearing, but compromised my hearing. Right. And I was able to experiment in all kinds of ways, and everyone was just so happy to give me a lesson in this and that all the time, including my dad, and I learned so much there.
So there were a lot of welders at the shop that could help out and guide you. Were you able to work with a lot of different materials back then? Oh
yes. In particular, my dad was doing a lot of jobs with titanium. It was during Operation Desert Storm. I had to think back for a second. And the helicopter blades, or maybe jet engine blades, the tip ends were worn down by the sand, and so they had to re-weld the blades, the tip ends of the blades on, and I was able to get a lot of those pieces that were sawed off, and at that time I was very interested in anodizing the titanium.
Okay, what does that mean?
That means you make an electrical bath and you put the titanium in it, and with some chemicals, and nothing could be simple as Coca-Cola in acid. And depending on the amount of voltage you put into the bath, it turns the metal different colors. You can anodize aluminum too. I never did that, but the titanium, I think I got a few shocks every now and then. But that was a phase.
What kind of colors were you able to get out of that?
Oh, beautiful blues, like iris, colors of iris.
Right.
Yeah.
But this is something that our studio audience should not go out and do themselves.
No, I took a lot of workshops in it
right.
before I did it. Yeah.
So your dad's influence was a great help in getting toward doing the metalworking, and then you went to college after that?
No, I had already graduated from college
when I started doing that.
Yeah, I did major in art and foreign languages.
How in the art education that you had, was it particularly in painting or sculpting, or was it a broad program?
Well, I saved all my tobacco working money and my babysitting money, and I went off to Mass College of Art, which I just love. That's in Boston. That was where my high school art teacher had gone to school. And after the first year, I ran out of money, and also my best friend who was up there studying, she was going to the School of Anatomy and Embalming.
Oh, wow.
She was a funeral director. She is still a great funeral director up in Plymouth, Mass. She fell ill after she took the flu shot. She got a syndrome called Guillain-Barré, so she was paralyzed. Yeah. So I didn't have anyone to live with, and my parents said that they would help me with college if I would move back to Connecticut. And I knew some people at Southern, so I ended up in New Haven. It was a little frustrating after the excitement of Boston, but
I can imagine.
It was a way to finish up and get on with things.
So after college, how did you then take your art forward? What did you start to do? What was the next steps for you?
Well, really, volunteering at Creative Arts in New Haven helped a lot, because when you teach there, or volunteer or teach there, you're able to take workshops for free or at reduced prices.
Right.
So I started experimenting in printmaking, and clay work, hand building clay, and then finally taking Ann Lehman's metal sculpture class. And that just was not moving fast enough for me, because I had the bug, and that's when I found Joe Corielli to understudy with. And I also started taking some jewelry workshops and classes, so it was, Creative Arts is just a fabulous place. I miss it. I should be in touch with them more, yeah.
Yeah. So when you started with the in the different areas, did the metalworking really attracted your interest, and that's the thing you started to move into?
Well, I think because I had, seen my dad with all these machines, and he designed and built vacuum atmospheric welding processes, welding tanks and the processes for them. There was just so much that he was so infectious with his passion about that it just took me over. And he was just so pleased and so excited that I was working in metal as well, that it was just a happy time.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Now I know you brought a lot of pieces. We're going to get into those in a second, but just as an overview, I saw on your website that you have your artwork in 100 galleries around the world. That's amazing.
In the beginning days of my career, I had friends that would participate in trade shows down in New York and beyond. And so I didn't really know which ones to take, so I signed up and participated in all of them. So one was called Art Expo, and it was more for fine art. There was the New York Gift Show, which is more for gift products. And at that time, there were a lot of fine art and craft galleries in business in the United States and around the world. The economy was different. I would have Japanese people come, or sometimes Chinese people come all the way over here and buy my entire booth.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, that's impressive.
My originals, whatever I would sell them. And it was a different time. Now, if you go to the trade shows, the participation isn't the same.
Was it out of these trade shows that you got into licensing? Is that one of the models that you worked
Definitely. Through the New York Gift Show, there was a buyer for Bloomingdale's by the name of Linda Simpson. I think it was Linda Feldman at the time. And she wanted to purchase some of my fanciful flights for Bloomingdale's. However, they were just a little bit too expensive for Bloomingdale's. And then years later, she came through my booth, and she started looking at everything, and her assistant was following her, and she was asking all kinds of questions. And I put my hands like this, because she's very, inquisitive, and sometimes you just don't know where she's coming from. And I said, they're all copyrighted. And she said, oh, that's very good. And I thought, well, either she's fibbing, or if she means it, that's really interesting. So it turns out that she worked for a gift company by the name of Silvestri. She was head of product development. And it was basically an all-male company up in Boston, Mass. And she had me give her 10 of the best-selling characters, which I did. And it was probably about 2 years later that they debuted them at the Atlanta trade show. And they had imported about $5 million worth of product, and it all sold out in Atlanta. So it was history-breaking.
Wow.
They were over the moon with the success of it. They had me make very large 8-foot pieces for the showroom. So as you walked into the showroom in Atlanta, you saw these big pieces, and it was another happy time in my life.
Now, I think when we were talking before, you mentioned that was actually very successful for Silvestri, wasn't it?
Yes, yeah, it was. Millions and millions of dollars of product with my name on it sold around the around the world through about 2010.
Excellent. And then
2000 to 2010. But the guys that ran Silvestri, the reason why it took 2 years for them to debut the product was that the guys never. It was my items were always shot down.
Huh.
You know, in terms of what would go forward with the next line. So they never, ever thought that we would have the success, and they were totally shocked. So that was fun.
They probably wish they had promoted it and did it a different way.
Yeah. Well, it all worked out. As a matter of fact, another one of the companies that Silvestri owned was International Silver.
Oh.
Yeah, which is a local company for us.
Isn't that interesting? Small world.
Yeah, it was.
Now, as part of the licensing, I guess that's a way for artists such as yourself to get your artwork into a broader population, isn't it?
That's true. I have agents these days. I don't focus on the licensing as much. I at some point, decided to refocus my career on my original artwork. And they represent my designs to the paper industry, primarily puzzles, paper plates, paper bags, cards, greeting cards, that kind of thing. But no gift product, and I do miss designing gift product, but I don't miss flying all over the United States.
Right.
It was a lot of work.
That gets tiring after a while.
It was.
Yeah. Now, I noticed on your website that you have products across the board. You mentioned a few of them. There's kitchen products, there's giftware, there's even quilts, in addition to your metalworking. Is there something you haven't done?
Oh, I don't know. The fun is always trying something new.
Right, yeah.
I don't know what the quilts are.
I saw one package on there that looked like somebody could do a quilt. It looked really interesting. Now, one of the things, as a result of all this, you've had collectors not only throughout the country, but across the world. Some famous collectors, too.
Yeah.
Can you mention some of those folks? I think they're on your website.
Well,
Booz Allen, the company?
Booz Allen Hamilton, yes, through a graphic designer. I did a huge job. They wanted to relate the balance and the other qualities of mobiles to aspects of their business. So they commissioned, I think they had 2 campaigns of it. I think they commissioned about 10 large-scale pieces.
Wow.
And then they used the imagery in their corporate brochures. I forgot about that one.
And the White House, I saw?
Oh, well, that was exciting. That was during the anthrax scare. I was one of the artists invited to create an ornament for the White House Christmas tree. So that was a very big thrill because I was able to meet Laura Bush and have my picture taken with her. And, but the truth is, no one really knows where the little Mark Twain is that I sent down to be on the Christmas tree because it went through the post office where everything had the anthrax, and it was.
Oh. So it didn't show up? Oh, that's too bad. Well, what about some of the other places? The Baltimore Sun?
It was still exciting.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I think I sent down another Mark Twain to be in the collection. They have archives, actually, of each president, and that was requested that I send another piece down, yeah.
Interesting. And some other places, like the Mayo Clinic, you did some work there. In the Baltimore Sun, I understand?
Oh, yes. Well, the editor of the Hartford Courant, Marty Petty, moved down to Baltimore to be editor there. And so she followed my work and had me create some things. She was a wonderful woman. But I haven't spoken with her in a while.
And then individual collectors as well. I think your website talked about Lucy Arnaz and Howie Mandel and probably some other celebrities as well. So that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes I don't meet these people directly. It's through an agent or a gallery or something.
Or they're purchasing it through a gallery, right.
So the newest piece I'm excited about that I've heard, but I don't know if it's true yet, is that one of my mobiles is featured in the living room of Itzhak Perlman in his documentary.
Wow.
So I'm waiting to see if it is my piece and what does he have. My fingers are crossed.
What a wonderful musician.
Oh,
So someone that truly appreciates art.
Yeah.
It's a nice compliment.
Yeah, it will be if it's true.
You know, as you think back in your career, you've had a chance to do so many things. And as you mentioned, in so many different mediums, certainly in metal, but also in paperwork and other materials. What are some of the most exciting projects that you've had a chance to work on that you think are really significant, that you enjoyed?
Well, really true to my heart was the project that I did with the Hole in the Wall gang and Newman's Own.
Yeah, tell us about that.
So I love working with kids, and I think I love it now more than I ever did. And often when I have the opportunities to work with a grant, I'm trying to work with children to make components that go into a bigger piece. And that was the idea of working with the Hole in the Wall gang kids to make a lighting fixture for their new corporate lobby in Norwalk. However, the rules for the children at the camp were that if they make something, they get to take it home. So I had to work with the inspiration of the kids to create the lampshade, and there was plenty of inspiration. That is the most phenomenal place in the world. So terrific to be with them in their mess hall lodge and have them singing and rooting and enjoying all the Newman's Own products and great food and roaring fire, and just so exciting.
Tell us about the artwork that you did. You said it was a lampshade?
Yes, they were looking for a lampshade for their for the main seating area as you walk in. They had decided to combine, locate all three aspects of their business into one facility so they could have a better communication, you know, between the different entities of their corporations or foundations. And yeah, so what I did was, it was during the fall, and all the leaves were falling. So I designed a piece that had silhouettes of leaves going all the way around, a round cylinder. Excuse me. And got a special lighting company to enhance the lights and create a shade for it. And I hung beads and charms of different insects, and of course there's a strong focus on the arts.
Right, right.
So I had charms of music notes and theater masks, and because they have a building for each one of these activities there at the camp. So actually the charms are within the leafy cutouts telling the story of the camp.
Wow, so you were able to incorporate so much of what they do in the structure itself.
I tried to.
What a great idea. Yeah. A certain color scheme as well?
I did a natural color scheme, it being Newman's Own Organics. So,
good.
So sort of metallic-y green, rust,
right, a lot of earth
golds,
earth
reds.
Colors, yeah, great. Well, you know, I'm sure our audience is probably fascinated with some of the pieces you brought today. Maybe we can take a few minutes and talk about them.
Okay.
So why don't you kick it off and tell us about some of these pieces? Want to start with the cat?
Sure. The cat, I love animals. I'm a big animal lover. I have 2 rescue cats and 3 rescue dogs. And sometimes I might paint them realistically, but this one, I was just in a springy mood the other day, so I drew on it, like it's tattooed.
So it's metal, right? And so you start with a large sheet of metal, you cut that first and sand it down, is that how it works?
Right, and this is actually a piece of folded metal. So anything that you can design in paper, you can create into sheet metal. I have a plasma arc cutter, and that's an electric arc that you hold with your hands, and you're standing with eyewear and a mask, and I do it outside. And so an electric arc goes through the metal and melts the metal, and compressed air comes right behind the molten metal. So you can cut a simple line. I'm looking for something.
Here or
yeah,
something?
sure, yeah.
Interesting. And then you can do you cut it this shape, or do you bend it afterwards? It must be cut this way.
It's cut. It's flat.
And then
splayed out, and then you bend it and hammer it and that sort of thing. I have a wooden mold, and these other little laser cut pieces, the flying women, are my fanciful flights. So those I order from a laser cutter who is in Chester, Connecticut. And so the pieces come flat, and then I rivet the arms together. And I often have workshops where I show people how to do this. And
nice.
I really enjoy sharing the process with people, and it's fun to see what they come up with.
It's a great educational time and spark their creative interest as well.
Yeah.
So, and how do you choose the color schemes?
Well, you know, they're all characters. In fact, I keep them in boxes in my studio like this. So this is the gardener.
Okay.
And inside the gardener box is everything you need for making the gardener.
What a great idea. And
There's
the gardener. With all the tools.
With, and bugs.
And bugs, of course.
And then we have also, I brought the mom and because Mom's Day is coming up, but it's always Mom's Day, yeah.
This is the mom, and this is the...
Oops, I'm connected now. Happens a lot.
So so you had the mom here.
And the coffee lover.
And the coffee lover. Well, I'm a coffee lover as well, so that...
So those are real coffee beans, and they smell great.
What a great idea. And you have other things here. You have cups as well, and you have the heart for the love part, right? And a spoon.
Right, and the coffee beans are on her dress, and...
Oh, I see that, yes, they're painted on there. And I like the way you can actually, you bend the metal to shape to provide some interesting, 3D effect.
Yeah.
Right? How'd you get into the idea of actually hanging all the charms and all the things on it? That's so unique.
I used to love to collect broken jewelry before anybody else did, and I would look for crystals and sparkly things, and I think I started telling you the story a little bit back that when I was at Creative Arts, the moms of some of my students were opening a folk art shop. And they learned that I was working in metal, and they said, we want you to be our first show. And I said, oh my goodness, and do what? And they said, make Gabriel the Herald Angel. What's Gabriel the Herald Angel? So they advised me to go look it up in early New England signage and folk art, which I did. I went down to the pier in New York and went to the antique show and walked and got some inspiration there. And my librarian got me some books on early New England signage and weather vanes and whatnot. So Gabriel the Herald Angel, I believe, was a guy. He's seen holding a horn flying, and sometimes it seems that this guy morphs into a female, and then often you'll see mermaids and mermen holding early New England signage or on topics of weather vanes as well. And so all this fascinated me. So there was my flying person. I didn't mean to make them flying, but I was just copying what I saw. And then making the smaller versions and attaching the jewelry. One day I found a little egg basket in this great little miniature and hobby store in Manchester, Connecticut. And I took it and I hung it on they were all made out of copper back then and patinaed. And there was a wonderful gallery called Connecticut Gallery in Marlborough, Connecticut. And all of a sudden everybody went crazy. They just started buying these things, and they had personalized requests, and I started making them. And I used to put like a little red for lipstick on the patina, and I think one day I just decided to paint them. And once I started painting them, it was like, oh, they could never be colorful enough after that. I was always like I would get bored with the paler colors and try to make it even brighter the next time. So that's how that happened.
And is this an example of?
Oh, this is an angel, a little angel. Yep. And one of my latest newsletters is called A Matter of Complexion, because in my public art pieces, I often regularly portray various ethnicities and diversities, age groups, that sort of thing, so everyone's represented. But in my personal work, they're really they've always been self-portraits, more or less. But in a recent Hartford show, I had some darker complexion, darker skinned pieces on display. I don't know why. I didn't consciously bring them. And they had such a reaction. And sometimes from people I was not even expecting to have a reaction from. And because there's so many mixed marriages now, and so people were seeing themselves reflected in my work.
They can relate to it.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
And I love the way you do the hairs too. All the hair is different. Sometimes it's like very curly there. Sometimes it's straight.
It's usually pretty big haired.
A lot of big
Texas hair. What's the saying? The bigger the hair, the taller the hair, the closer to God.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, you're taller. We hope you enjoyed part 1 with Karen Rossi. And keep an eye out for part 2. Both of them can be seen on public access television, patv15.com. Thanks again for watching.